Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell. Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Jason Mendelsohn, and you're watching The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Oh, man, I love it. This is, it's Friday, by the way, everybody. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us and checking us out. It's just about to be Christmas if you listen on the live side, obviously, but if you're on the podcast side, we recorded this the last Friday before Christmas, so it's neat to do this. And just because it's Friday, and one of the things that we're doing more of now is I've got a charity called Save the Brave that I'm the media arm for it. And so I wanted to take a moment and say, if you are listening and you are looking for a place to give, or you want to do the charity on top thing and give somebody else charity, hey, consider Save the Brave, savethebrave.org. Go there, click on the donate tab, put a small amount of money in. Heck, it could be monthly, or it can be a one-time thing. And if you're a business, if you're a business and you're like, hey, Pete, we'd like to commit to doing something for you for the over the year of 2021, hey, let me know. We'd love to do that. Whether you want to donate a boat, time on something, land, I mean, all of these things have been given to Save the Brave in the past, or just, a check at the end of the year. We'd love to talk to you. Definitely reach out to me at pete@breakitdownshow.com, because charity is good for everybody. And by the way, charity's not supposed to be easy. If you're wondering how the hell will I do that, if the problems were simple, they would already be solved. It takes some work to do it. So lean on the veteran PTSD problem with me. If your charity is something else, God bless, let's do it. Let me know how I can support you guys. I'm glad to lean on your problem with you. So anyhow, I'm saying that in part because, Jason, we're always looking to find ways to gather people to work on big problems. And I think your story is so unique. It's a cancer story, everybody. Jason's a cancer survivor. I guess I'll let you do the background real quick, talk about the lump and all those things that happened, and then let's get into why this is important and why we're bringing awareness to it.
So I'll start at the beginning. Do you want me to share? I'm not sure what people know or if they know anything about me, but here's the short story. Back in 2014, while taking a financial exam, I placed my hand on my face to ponder a question, moved my hand down to my neck and felt a bump. Literally had no symptoms. My throat didn't bother me. I had no sores in my mouth. I ended up getting diagnosed, and I'll tell this quickly. I got diagnosed with stage 4 HPV-related tonsil cancer, which was a diagnosis I had never heard of, nor had I ever known someone to be diagnosed with it. So if I go back to that day, taking the exam, feel the bump, show my father who's a doctor, and he said, let's call the ear, nose, and throat doctor, which we did. He said, in the slight chance, he said, you don't drink heavily, you don't smoke, come see me in a few weeks. This was a Thursday. I was like, great, I'll be there on Monday, because I'm a guy that goes to the doctor. It's probably lesson number 1. Go to the doctor. Don't go to the doctor. Yes. Manly to not go. So I went to the doctor. They put me on 10 days of antibiotics and steroids. I left 2 days later, right, for the Keys, ran the equivalent of a 5K, flew from the Keys on that Sunday to DC, where I lobbied on Capitol Hill, flew home on a Wednesday. Thursday had a CAT scan. Friday had a needle biopsy. Monday found out I had stage 4 HPV-related tonsil cancer. And again, when they gave me that antibiotic, they said, but I didn't hear them say it because I felt literally that healthy. In the slight chance that this doesn't go away, let's immediately schedule you for a needle biopsy and CAT scan. So I was feeling awesome, didn't pay attention, all of a sudden flew home and in just a few days later diagnosed with cancer. And it was, unbelievable to me, because cancer was something that other people got diagnosed with, not me.
Yeah. Well, and healthy people that feel fantastic, that just did a course of steroids, I feel even more fantastic. Running 5Ks. Yeah. They don't have stage 4 cancer,
Well, so, and again, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I had really not known much about HPV at the time. So I'll tell you what I knew. Well, actually, I'll tell you what I learned. HPV is the most common sexually transmitted disease on the planet. Never knew it. I knew actually that it was the leading cause of cervical cancer for women, but I literally had no idea about HPV-related tongue, throat, or tonsil cancer. Literally never heard of it. When I did research, I ended up learning more about it. Everything was about Michael Douglas, so forth and so on. In fact, even today, the number one question I get asked by people all over the world is that what Michael Douglas had? And just for a little levity, I always tell people it's the one thing he and I have in common outside of our love for Catherine Zeta Jones. Like, that's my answer. So do you want me to keep going?
Well, no, let me ask you a question about this then. I was this many days old when I found all these things out. I mean, there are so many different cancers to know about, but this one is spread as a sexually transmitted disease. And it sounds like a lot of people have sex. And so, should we be screening for this thing, or how do you even, how does it present?
So we're gonna kind of do this a little bit backwards, but the answer is yes. There's oral cancer screenings. So like when you go to the dentist, they look in your mouth, they make sure there's no sores, no discoloration, things of that nature. So yes, or if you ever hear about organizations like the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance, of which I sit on the board. So I'm on the executive board. I have been for several years. We do, as well as many organizations or doctors' offices throughout the country, provide these head and neck cancer screenings, typically in April, where it's, OHANCA, which is the Oral Head and Neck Cancer Awareness Month. But this is like a thing that we do. But yes, everybody should go to a screening, just like any other cancer. This is something that is extremely serious. And in fact, in the last 2 years, oropharyngeal cancer, which is tongue, throat, and tonsil, has surpassed cervical cancer.
Wow.
And so for a cancer that most people have never heard of,
yeah,
it has become an epidemic among men. And they believe that I was actually exposed to the virus through oral sex with a woman when I was 19 in college. And I didn't find a bump on my neck until age 44. So out of 100 people that get diagnosed, 99% of them, their body fights off the virus. They never knew they had it. It's the 1% like me that decades later can end up with cancer. And so, yes, back to your point, oral cancer screenings are extremely important.
Yeah, again, all new stuff to me. It's not often that I'm like, I know nothing about this, but apparently I know nothing about this. So my good/bad decision on sexual partners back in college can come back to haunt me years later. It's terrifying. And then, as I get older, I'll be 51 in a month exactly. And
happy
when
birthday,
I start to realize all of the things, that we have to check for, like, oh, you're supposed to see your dermatologist at least once a year, if not a little bit more than once a year. I'm like, I didn't even know I had a dermatologist, but you have to get your skin checked out, because if you get, melanoma, that stuff is brutal. If it gets out of the gate and gets going on you, you're probably not surviving it. And so, like, I go to the VA, I'm a veteran, and I'll say I need to get screened for by the dermatologist to get my body looked at, and they're like, yeah, maybe. Like,
by the way, thanks for serving. I did read that about your bio. Thank you for serving. And my dad happens to be a dermatologist.
Yeah.
So I've been doing those full body checks for years. But you're absolutely right.
Right. And we're not talking about a fancy thing. It's like, hey, wear sunscreen, wear more sunscreen. Hey, dummy, wear sunscreen. And then it looks like everything's good here. I mean, it's pretty fast. Maybe you do like a precancerous cream thing. But I didn't know about these things until maybe 3 years ago. As like a person that's lived half of 100 years, I've barely looked at these things. And I've certainly had sex. And so I probably have been, I've certainly not prevented my exposure to HPV. It's a little bit shocking I've been to the dentist, but I never even thought about them checking my mouth for sores and potential cancers.
I'll tell you, if that vaccine would have been around when we were kids, so I am 51, and had it been around when we were kids, I would have definitely been given the vaccine and most likely would have never been diagnosed with cancer years later at age 44. And just so we're clear about this, I don't think I said this earlier. When I was diagnosed, the research that I did, this is what I learned. 3 out of 4 adults by 30 have HPV. 3 out of 4 adults by 30, 62% of freshmen in college, and men between the ages of 40 and 60 are the most highly diagnosed with HPV-related cancer or oropharyngeal cancer, so tongue, throat, tonsil, decades after being exposed. When I finally beat cancer, a year and a half later, my father's best friend at age 74 had been married 50 years, was diagnosed with HPV-related throat cancer. And I deal with guys all over the world, 2 to 4 a week. And I will tell you, most of them between 40 and 60, there are still women that are diagnosed and there are people, outside of those ages. But almost every guy I speak with, they believe, their doctors say they were probably exposed decades earlier. And so I figure, hopefully you'll smile with this, I'm either going to go down in history because of, my cancer story has been shared in 100 countries, but I'm either going to go down in history as either saving hundreds of thousands of lives from HPV preventable cancer, or as the guy who destroyed oral sex for the planet, which I'm hoping it's the first one, just so we're clear.
Well, maybe you both. Maybe you pull both off.
I don't know.
Yeah, these numbers are insane. Would you briefly go through that again? Because what you're telling me is that if you've had sex, you should just live under the assumption that you have been exposed to HPV. I mean, I don't see how, with the numbers you just said, how you could sanely think that you haven't been exposed to it, especially if you've had sex with,
correct.
I kind of killed it for a while there,
You are so funny. The answer is, you're absolutely right. Most people have been exposed to the virus. Most people, have had this virus. Most people's bodies fight off the virus. The problem is if your body doesn't fight off the virus and it lays in the crypts of your throat for decades. So for instance, again, when I found the bump on my neck, I shave every day, or I used to, right? I recently shaved my head and grew a beard, but I shave every day or every other day for work. Never saw that bump before. It just appeared out of nowhere. And that was the cancer that had spread from my tonsil to my lymph nodes. So you just want to definitely be aware. Make sure, if you ever see a bump on your neck, you immediately go to the doctor, because again, that could have been, in my opinion, that could be the cancer going from, its primary location to a lymph node. Or if you have sores in your mouth that aren't healing, or if you feel like, people will say that someone described it as feeling like they had a fishbone in their throat, or a persistent cough, or just things that don't seem normal. I was on a call yesterday with a pharmaceutical company, and they had all these different survivors. And I will tell you, it took some patients 2 years to get to an ear, nose, and throat doctor, whereas I was at one within a week. It's really important to know that I would recommend, if you have any of these characteristics I'm describing, go see an ear, nose, and throat doctor first, rather than 6 to 12 to 24 months down the line where your cancer could potentially spread in the event that you do have cancer, which I hope you don't.
Yeah, it's, God, I literally have like a thing every now and then where it feels like someone's pushing, like right here, like my tracheotomy spot. There's no, I've never had a tracheotomy, but like right there,
right,
where it's not like a choke, but you're like, that's the very beginnings of like a choking kind of sensation.
Yep.
And I went to my doctor and I'm like, there's this weird thing, and it's gone. It's been gone for a while.
Right.
But it's these things. And like, I've never been taught to, there was that Check 'em Boys campaign to like check your testicles,
right,
when you shower, because if you find that bump, it's a decent chance that you can get there. But I've never thought about that. Like, there's literally, like, if you get a cyst, you're like, that's got to be a cyst,
right,
and then you just blow it off. But what if it's not a cyst? What if it's, that terrifying, man?
Well, and again, those who have been diagnosed with cancer, and let me just tell you, if you don't mind if I digress. Please. So I have now been married 24 years. I have boy-girl twins that are 19. I have a 13-year-old son. Back then, my son was 6, my twins were 12, and I've been married 17 years. When I found out I was diagnosed with stage 4 HPV-related tonsil cancer, I ended up having a radical tonsillectomy, neck dissection. So I have a scar that runs from the bottom of my right ear to the center of my throat. And it looks good now, but because my dad's a dermatologist, I've used a lot of scar cream, but I had a thick keloiding scar. And then I had 7 weeks of chemo, radiation, and a feeding tube. Let me explain to you what radiation's like, if you don't mind.
Please.
Because this should motivate anyone to go get checked or to give their kids, really, I'm not a doctor, right? So all I am is a survivor who went public, because most people think of HPV and there's a stigma associated with it, right? Most common sexually transmitted disease. People are embarrassed. Even I'll have women or men whisper to me, I had HPV. I'm like, you don't need to whisper. 3 out of 4 adults by 30 have this. But when you go through radiation, they clip your head down to a table, right? You're laying on your back, clip your head down, tongue to the roof of the mouth, 5 days a week for 7 weeks. 3rd-degree burns I ended up with in my throat after 4.5 to 5 weeks, which feels like someone cracked a glass bottle and shoved the glass into my throat. I had a feeding tube where I had 7 Ensures a day, 2 Gatorades a day through that feeding tube. Couldn't swallow my own saliva for like a month, in bed 18 hours a day. So the reason I tell you all that is if anyone hesitates and says, well, do I really want to? Let me tell you what you don't want. You don't want the side effects of radiation for a lifetime, and you don't want to go through the 8 weeks of hell that I went through. I got diagnosed. I made videos to my kids saying goodbye. My videos went something like this. One day you're going to get married. I'm not going to be there. This is what's important. This was just like the mental anguish and the pain. So again, I don't want to just, talk too much, but if people can understand this is not a joke, if you have a problem, any of those things we talked about earlier, go see your ENT. Just don't blow it off, because this could save your life. I mean, I was stage 4 at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, they downgraded the staging on this cancer. So for my diagnosis, had I been diagnosed then, I would have been stage 1, because the survival rate for head and neck cancer of this type is over 85%. Head and neck cancer caused by smoking and alcohol abuse is less than 35%. So it's really important to know that you have this sooner than later and to go through treatment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So at the time you had what they called stage 4 cancer, but if you got it today, it would be stage 1. Same treatment, or is there a lighter form of this that you'd have to go through if you got it today?
So it's interesting. I talk to people all the time that are stage 1 and 2 rather than 3 and 4 from a few years ago. And many of them are still going through, 7 weeks of chemo and radiation, having surgeries. There are some trials and there are some lesser treatments, but the majority of them are still having much of the same treatment that I went through. I mean, cisplatin was my chemo drug. It just made me nauseous, did not make my hair fall out. I know, for a little levity. People even ask me today, hey, Jason, did you lose all your hair from chemo? I'm like, that was 2014. This was male pattern baldness, which I ended up shaving. So the treatment might be less today, but many times over, it's the same. Just people aren't as scared when they hear stage 1 or 2 versus 3 or 4.
But I mean, it is terrifying to have your neck boiled by radiation. I mean, that's terrifying, as terrifying gets. And then I would imagine that if we're able to get to it early, it doesn't metastasize into your lymph nodes. And I don't know, there are many things that are scarier than lymph node cancer. Like, do you expect cancer to get you at some point, no matter what now, because you've had it in there? Or
well, so yeah, it's an interesting question. So I was thinking, which might be the reverse of what you're asking me, but I was hoping, I said to a doctor the other day, now that I've been through chemo and radiation, does that mean that my body's had chemo through it? So if I was going to be getting cancer from some other type, it's actually been killed off already. So I'm actually pushing it down the road or getting rid of it, which, by the way, they told me is not the case. If you're asking my concern with cancer in the future, what my really number one fear, and normally I'm giving people hope, not scaring them, just so we're clear by this conversation, because we haven't talked about my Superman HPV website or anything, but my concern is the side effects of radiation long-term.
Sure.
And radiation long-term.
Sure.
And reoccurrence, which is what you were asking. I try not to think about them, because every doctor I've had says, Jason, you have nothing to worry about.
Good.
But any cancer survivor, whether it's this cancer or any other kind of cancer, I think that's always a concern that's in the back of your head.
Yeah, I mean, and rightfully so. And luckily, you don't have one of those cancers that's like, at some point it is going to get you. It's just, who knows when. It'll be a long time.
Right.
It's good not to have that. But again, like getting checked, like today, making an appointment with that ear, nose, and throat doctor and saying, hey, check me out, make sure I'm good. If you do have that early, and maybe there's a precancerous kind of treatment like dermatologists have or something like that, but getting it when it's just tonsils being removed instead of your whole neck opened up. I mean, maybe you can, I don't know. I'm assuming you didn't work during the treatment.
So you know what? And I was in bed 18 hours a day for like a month. I always tell people the only good thing about that was that I got to watch 7 years of Lost in 2.5 weeks.
Yes.
But I worked from my computer a little bit. But for a lot of people that I deal with, right, the patients, they're actually out of work. And so this can be financially devastating to the average person who doesn't have, reoccurring revenue, things of that nature. I was not working as hard as I normally did. I was working very little. I happen to be president of my family business. My brother is CEO, my sister's EVP, so they all had to pick up the slack while I was laying in bed. So my situation was a little different. But for a lot of people, third-degree burns in your throat. Let me explain to you. I was trying to brush over it earlier, but there was, I would get Charlie horses in my neck. The saliva was so thick that I couldn't swallow it. So literally, I'd be spitting it into a cup all day long. So imagine every time anyone listening to this podcast today, every time you're going to swallow, spit into a cup. When the cup gets full, pour it into your drain in your sink. My saliva was so thick back then that it wouldn't go down the drain. So I had to pour it into a toilet, pour it into a trash can. I would go to sleep at night. I'd go to sleep for a few minutes and I would wake up as if someone was choking me because the saliva was so thick it would be covering my breathing way, my airway. And then the last thing, again, not to depress everyone on the phone because we will get to a happier point, is that I was going to sleep hydrated. So I would take my blood pressure all day long, 20 to 30 times a day, because I could tell when my heart was pumping harder that I was becoming dehydrated. Well, at night I would go to sleep. I was not sweating at all during the day. I was not throwing up, and I did not have diarrhea at all. And I was going to sleep and 2 hours later waking up dehydrated because the third-degree burns in my throat were sucking the fluid from the inside out. So I was constantly pumping fluid into my feeding tube, which is a long tube that was just sticking out of my stomach for a few months. And so I tell you all that because, again, serving on the board of the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance, knowing there's a vaccine that could prevent your kids, boys and girls, decades from now from ever dealing with this is one of the reasons I went public and decided I would try to beat the stigma, or just change the stigma that exists with so many people because, of HPV being the most common sexually transmitted disease on the planet. So again, I hope I don't say that too many times or too often for your show, but that's really important. There's nothing, people shouldn't feel alone when 3 out of 4 adults by 30 have this.
Yeah. And, I wanted to bring up the virus thing at an appropriate time. It seems like we're there, getting these viruses. And anytime we say the word virus, we have to all of a sudden do a whole conversation on, is it safe? Am I going to get, a Bell's palsy from it? Or, is my kid going to suffer if they get this thing? So can you talk a little bit about the virus and what it means in terms of getting it?
So, and do you mean the virus or do you mean the vaccine?
I say virus and vaccine. I always get that wrong. My mouth won't say the word vaccine. The vaccine, talk about the challenges with it.
Yeah, so let me give you my perspective as a non-doctor, right? I'm a father of 3 and I deal with doctors throughout obviously from the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance, but all over the country and all over the world. I shared my story in Ireland last year. Every doctor I've ever dealt with says they would give the vaccine to both their son and their daughter. And that vaccine can be given to kids as long as they're 9 years old or older. Most kids get it, I will tell you, between the ages of 11 and 14, get the vaccine. Boys and girls, not just girls, because a lot of times when it first came out, people just gave it to their daughters because they equated the vaccine and HPV and everything with cervical cancer. But today it is highly recommended for boys and girls. And it's important that if they get it, if they're going to get the vaccine, which, we would hope that, everyone gets it so they can be, spared from preventable cancer, that they get it before they're sexually active. Because that is really the point. If you get the vaccine, I think you can get it up to age 45 now. And I don't mean I know you can. It used to be 26, then it moved to 45. But if you've been exposed to the strains that cause cancer, it doesn't help you. It prevents you from, having cancer or other issues before you're exposed. So again, there are the anti-vaxxers that will never use a vaccine.
Right.
And then there are the majority of people that say, you know what, I'm going to find out more about this by speaking with my kid's pediatrician or my family practice doctor, where they can get good information regarding what the benefits would be to providing this vaccine to their kids. So again, I will tell you, are there people that maybe have had issues? Sure. With any vaccine, there's always that slight chance. But the fact that everyone knows through research that 3 out of 4 adults by 30 have HPV, I would say, at least for me as a father, and I love my kids, I love my wife, as a survivor who's been through the hell of treatment, I would never expose my kids to the hell of this treatment and to being diagnosed with a cancer that's preventable. And again, this might be too easily said or too easily stated, but if there was a vaccine and you knew you would prevent your son from ever getting testicular cancer, or a girl from ever getting breast cancer, or either of your kids from ever getting lung cancer, everybody would give it to their kids, right? Like there wouldn't even be a question. There'd still be the anti-vaxxers, so we'll put them in a group of their own. But in general, people would always give the vaccine to their kids, and they would find out more about it from their kid's doctor, obviously, before. Now we have a vaccine that some tied, which deals with HPV, is the most common sexually transmitted disease, and some parents focus on the word sex versus preventable cancer. And I think that has been the issue over years. And so I know doctors and others, advocacy groups, have really been working really diligently to focus the benefit of the vaccine versus, people being scared by the letters, the three letters HPV. Was that helpful? I know that was layman's terms, but to me, it's everything.
I think that's, I'm going to see if I can make it even simpler based on what you just taught me, and then let me know if I'm getting this right, because I'm on full-on learn mode here. I knew nothing about this walking into it. It's like, I went to the website and researched and all that. And by the way, the website's right here. If you're watching on the live side, supermanhpv.com. And there's videos there, there's blogs, there's a lot of content. You can go chew through this, and you guys should, because if you're like me at all completely, and I know a lot about a lot of things, I don't know anything about this. So in terms of the vaccine, the odds on the vaccine doing something problematic or you having a bad response, you're never going to know anyhow until you get the vaccine, but are way longer, like exponentially longer than the odds are that you're going to be, or your child will be exposed to something that's a 75% at least proposition, and likely higher if they're sexually active, like college kids can be at times.
Yeah, the answer is yes, all day long. Right. I would say, but again, speak to your kid's doctor, because that's what, obviously you need to say from a liability perspective. But yes, 100%, they're going to be exposed to HPV, and this is a vaccine that protects them. And they believe, go ahead.
I was going to say, I bet all the ear, nose, and throat doctors are like, my kid already been vaccinated. I don't want to see any of my kids get this thing. I mean, that's ultimately the answer, right? Like if the doctors are giving their kids the inoculation, then, that's game over. Let's get it done.
Correct. All day long, that answer is yes. Even just to tell you, the World Health Organization a few years ago charged countries to eliminate HPV-related cancers, cervical cancer in particular. And the way And the three countries that stood up and said, yes, we're going to eliminate it, get rid of this cancer, it was the US, Canada, and Australia. And the way they were doing that was by increasing HPV vaccination rates. At the end of the day, I spoke at a congressional briefing last year on Capitol Hill regarding HPV-related preventable cancer and eliminating it. And the support from organizations and just different groups, knowing that this is a real possibility, and the science that's been done, it is 100% worth your listeners checking into before they take the opinion of an anti-vaxxer on Facebook. And that's honestly what the risk is. And I don't mean they're not nice people. A lot of people just don't know. Was that too direct?
No. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. And if not, why not? Is this a standard panel of shots that a 5-year-old gets going in? Is that the answer? It's just say you're not coming to school unless you've got measles, mumps, rubella, tetanus, and the HPV vaccination.
So if you're asking me as a non-doctor, I would say yes, that would be critical.
Not medical advice. Yes. Right.
Correct. But I can tell you that I don't believe, and again, I don't know this specifically, but I don't believe the majority of states, I think there may be one or two that require the vaccine, but honestly, I'd have to research that. So I don't want to even answer that. But yes, I think that's a great idea, because you know that your kids who are in school, high school, college, are going to be exposed to another kid who maybe didn't have the vaccine. And so, I think it would be a smart idea.
When your kid gets to an appropriate age where, sexual exploration starts, and God, you don't want to say how early that number can be, but at some point, like this is the path and how we get rid of it. How are we doing at reducing the numbers here in the U.S. since we've committed to this? Are we acting like a committed nation?
Not at a high level. I will tell you, I don't know the exact rates, but I know that in every meeting I speak at, most of them are saying, you know what, we're having challenges increasing the rates. They're increasing because there's more. I think, again, my opinion, as that more people are beginning to know people who have been diagnosed with this cancer. When I was diagnosed in 2014, like I said, I'd never heard of it before.
Right.
Today, many people are starting to hear about it. They see people. They understand now more about the vaccine. It's not just for girls, because that's the one thing also that parents say to me is, I wish I heard your story years ago. I gave the vaccine to my daughter, not to my son. I had no idea it was for boys. So I know that vaccination rates are trending upward, but I know we're a far, cry away from having them where they need to be. And I think that's why my story, again, this isn't about me. And we will get to a point where I just spend a few minutes on my website, because I don't want people to think I'm an arrogant jerk who thinks he's Superman, because that's obviously not me. But I think as my story gets shared and as I speak at places, that is almost every organization's goal, is to increase HPV vaccination rates, because they're all saying that they're not where they need to be.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to spend some time on your website. It's such a fascinating landscape to explore. I mean, there are all these things that are preventable, or at least require monitoring. And again, I had no idea. So the vaccination is great for the young kids, especially pre-sexual activity and everything. For those of us adults who are exposed, our best option is to continue to make that part of your care and get checked out. I mean, that's on my list now. It's one more thing that I'm going to start doing, and I'm going to call a VA and be like, I need to go see the ear, nose, and throat guy and get checked, because I'd rather catch it at stage 0 than stage 4. That's because that goes without saying. Thanks for doing this. I mean, I literally had no idea. I knew that there was cervical cancer, but that's a girl thing. I didn't even pay attention because I'm not a girl. I don't even know how to prevent that with my daughter. She's 23. Who knows? Maybe the ship.
The HPV vaccine is the answer.
Okay.
Right? She's 23. I mean, she's certainly within the range. I would say speak to her doctor, or she speaks with her doctor, right? Because she's 23.
Yeah. About should I ask her about it,
Correct, because they really do believe it will eliminate cervical cancer for women. I'll also tell you this, and again, probably borderline, should I be sharing? But because you and I are almost the same age, had I known that this was a cancer that existed, my concern growing up was getting a girl pregnant or getting an STD. It was not having oral sex and getting cancer. Right. So probably there are a lot more people that would have had protected sex and not oral sex had they realized they could get cancer from oral sex.
Don't kill oral sex. Come on, man.
I'm not trying to kill it. I'm just being realistic with, hey, make sure you know the person. How's that?
Yeah. Well, get me some Dental Dam. Remember when Dental Dam was a thing? Like, there's nothing more like turn off than let me get some Dental Dam.
Listen,
we're
all
singing
better
about
than cancer. Just so we're clear, all better than cancer. So
all better than cancer. We're talking about WAP in nationally recognized number one hit songs, and you're like, Anyhow, let's get serious about the website then. Let's get into Superman HPV and why you're an arrogant jerk and call yourself Superman.
So when I was diagnosed, I started researching this cancer. I'm like, I need to learn as much as I possibly can. And quite honestly, I am naturally a positive person. I was raised by positive parents, and I've always been just positive attitude. I started researching this cancer, and what I was reading about was people's teeth falling out, their jaws cracking, hearing issues, all these things. And I thought, I feel worse, not better. So I survived. Obviously, when I was going through treatment, my friends called me Superman during chemo and radiation treatment, saying I was tough like Superman. So believe it or not, looked up and looked for different websites that I could start and found that Superman HPV, amazingly enough, was available. So I chose to create a website that would provide inspiration and information for those diagnosed and or researching HPV, the HPV vaccine, and HPV-related cancers. And I'm going to give the 1 minute on this. So I start this website. I get contacted by an NBC News reporter who's writing an article regarding HPV. And she said, I was at a business meeting, and she called me and she said, would you mind if I shared your website and story in an article? I said, no, that's why I created it, to help people, because this didn't exist. I couldn't find anything this positive when I was diagnosed. So the article launches. That afternoon, like 10 people throughout the country emailed me and said, so thank you so much for sharing your story in the article, I no longer feel alone.
Huh.
I emailed the news reporter and I said, listen, thank you. That's all I wanted. 10 people told me they're happy that I shared my story. She emails me back within like a second and a half, and it says 500,000 people read the article in 24 hours. 500,000 people read the article. You're going to likely appear on NBC Nightly News. They're going to call you. And the next day, my family appeared that evening on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt in 2017. And that's kind of what launched realizing that people could benefit from hearing my story. People shouldn't feel alone, right? And honestly, I get chills throughout my body to know, like, I was going through pure hell. My family is a cross between the Waltons from years ago. The Waltons, like John Boy, the Waltons and My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Meld the two together and sprinkle Judaism on top, and that's us. So we're a close family, and I really felt isolated. And my brother's my next door neighbor, and I thought, you know what? If I feel like this, people that don't have this must really feel alone. And so launched the website, found around that same time, a little before that, obviously, or a little before that, had the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance, which they also had positive information that made me feel better. And that's what made me reach out to them. I was searching online for something, and that's who I found. And thank goodness I did, because their executive director team and all their doctors are just not only knowledgeable, but kind individuals looking to prevent this cancer and really talk a lot about screenings like what you mentioned. And I joined the organization. We've really grown the ambassador program, which helps other survivors share their stories. And so between my supermanhpv.com website, and I also have Facebook and Instagram, I don't sell anything. I just try to reach people the best that I can. And between the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance, I think we're doing a really good job trying to share the message that, one, there shouldn't be a stigma associated with HPV, that it's a preventable cancer, and that no one needs to feel alone, that we're here to support them if ever diagnosed with this type of cancer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking a pause because it's such a powerful thing when you can look at your own experience and decide, how hard it was for you. I mean, it's easy to look and say, here's a big, tight family. You guys have your own business. They're able to cover for you. You're able to take time off. None of those things describe most people, like, who get something like this where you truly are alone. You're terrified to get the bad news, and so you don't go to the doctor. And then you couldn't afford bad news if they gave it to you, because you're going to have to go to work because there's no other way around it, And then also, I don't know how you were, but I know a lot of my friends that have had cancer and gone through some pretty severe therapy. It makes you literally crazy because your brain is not working on the optimum fuel it normally gets food-wise. I mean, you're surviving on Pedialyte and Ensure. That doesn't make your brain operate in a way that makes any damn sense. I mean, it's a horror show to think about that. What does that community look like? If you are a person of modest means, or you're struggling to just get through the day, let alone have cancer waylay you, what does that look like in terms of support in the community?
Well, so let me speak from the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance perspective. So we do a lot to grow our gas card program, which is really to provide gas cards to people that can't afford to get to treatment. And so we're always looking for that type of support. And there's a lot of organizations out there, but this is one dear to my heart, obviously, because can you imagine being diagnosed with cancer, yet you can't afford to drive to chemo or radiation, or have someone drive you? Because I was fortunate that, I'm kind of a type A person, if you haven't been able to tell so far. And I put together a full schedule of who was taking me where, who was visiting me at chemo. I mean, I did this whole thing. But if you're isolated, how do you get to treatment? And then people are worrying about how to pay for treatment. So one, I would say anyone who ever gets diagnosed, or if you're a caregiver, you need any type of support. If you go to headandneck.org, the word head, the word and spelled out, the word neck spelled out.org, we have a support mechanism for everyone.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
If you go to headandneck.org, the word head, the word and spelled out, the word neck spelled out.org, we have a support mechanism for everyone. secondly, you can always go to my website, Facebook chat, anywhere, and I speak to cancer patients throughout the day, 24/7, if they need me. I've been giving out my cell phone for years, literally years, and it's never been abused. But it can be really, really mentally crippling to feel alone, back to your point, without that structure. And so, or without that support structure. So, but there are groups like the ones I mentioned that can support you. So anyone listening to this, you may not, hopefully this stuff doesn't come across as negative, but I've had more people come up to me 6 months later saying, I was listening to you, there was no cancer. And then 6 months later, they have a friend or themselves or someone gets diagnosed, and then they come back to the information and it now becomes relevant. Then it was interesting. Then it now it becomes relevant.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of support mechanisms today that exist that I just was not aware of back in 2014 when I was diagnosed.
If you're looking on the live episode, you can see if headandneck.org, and then below in the crawler is the gas card program. Same thing, same website, just the gas card additional thing. But I mean, yeah, these are the resources that are out there. And I mean, willing to give out your phone number. I mean, this is a powerful thing. How much is this taking over your life? I mean, you're speaking in front of Congress. You have a business to run. It seems like, I mean, you have a budget to get you. I booked you because you have a PR person. I mean, this is a significant investment to do this. One, why? And then how much is this costing? Or not costing, but like in terms of
I know
time.
what you're asking.
Yeah.
So I don't sleep a lot. That's true. I do not sleep a lot. You know what? Similar to how people have hobbies, whether it's whatever it is, people that are on tennis teams or people that go to the gym all the time or do different things. I just am very structured and I schedule a lot. So I will tell you this I work typically for my business 8:30 to 6 Monday through Friday, but I still check emails evenings and weekends. I then respond to cancer patients via text, via Facebook chat, via LinkedIn, via all these different areas. Thank goodness. So I am a one-man show. And when I say that to you for Superman HPV, so everything I do and the team that helps the patients that reach out to me, everything is with the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance. So I'm not trying to be everything to everyone when it comes to what their needs are. I know that I don't have that bandwidth, nor do I have that expertise. So our executive director at the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance, our administrative team, the doctors there, we all work jointly together. My life is busy, right? So on a Saturday a few weeks ago, I appeared on this thing that's going to be in doctors' offices, but it was a Saturday. So when most people might go to the beach, I was doing this on Saturday. I still, have date night with my wife when we could go out, but we still do it here in the house. Or I'm always with my kids. So this has become a routine part of my life. Some people do say, why don't you just move on? People have asked my wife that. Why doesn't he just move on? It's easy to do, right? You don't think about cancer all the time. Reality is this. I honestly believe and feel and hope that I'm going to be saving hundreds of thousands of lives for generations to come. And I feel responsible for, podcasts like this, for people that are going out of their way and making this a topic like you have, and others to do that, because I think it honestly will do good and help people for generations to come. So I just structure, just like anything that's important in your life, whether it's this or another charity that you mentioned earlier or others, you find time for what's important. My primary business and family come first. Everything else comes as a close second, but I do it when I can do it. And I just do the best that I can and feel good about that.
Yeah, well, and I know from doing a lot of charity work myself, you'll echo this, but the time and effort spent doing it is paid personally back in enrichment, so many different ways, opportunities, wonderful people that you meet, the chance to just see the world in a different way. I doing the veteran stuff that I do and the other charities that I support, doing these episodes like this is all service, as part of my personal charitable charter. These things matter, and it's important to be able to do that kind of work. And if you're an adult and you have any spare bandwidth, I'm going to lean on you and say you have to do something. to make the world a better place. You don't have to save 100,000 lives. You can literally get a hold of someone like Jason and say, "Hey, how can I support you guys?" And I guarantee you, that organization has a list of things that they would love to hand off to somebody else. It's including, could you run to the post office for us 2 times a week to pick up and drop off mail, and just give us that time? And that would be enormously helpful, because otherwise Jason has to do it himself, or somebody. And I'm putting it all on Jason, but there's only so many people in these organizations, and simple stuff like that. Like, if you could, like, we're here in LA, right? Like, let's say you flew into Orange County for something, you've got to get from the airport to the event. Well, could someone pick him up at the airport? Like, yes, that's so easy. It's so easy. Like, just go do that. That can be service.
I was speaking to my kids just a few days ago, and this might be even more personal than you want, but we were talking. It's Hanukkah. Last night was yesterday, and we were talking about giving and giving back. And I said, listen, there's 2 ways you can do that: time or money. Those are the 2 options. And when you don't have money, you can give time, a little or a lot. And we were just having that whole discussion regarding helping others, because even a bad day for me is not as bad as a bad day for someone else who's got real issues. A lot of times we say this is a first world problem, right? So again, when you've been through cancer, you're kind of like, it's not cancer. That's like always the way we look at things. It's not as bad as it could be. Yeah. But I think you're absolutely right. I think helping others, whether it's a little bit of time or a lot of time, is really rewarding in and of itself for the person who's actually providing that time to help.
I'm also going to say this about charity. I'm going to get on my charity soapbox for a minute. One, don't be mad that people who are good at charity and are great at fundraising make a lot of money, because we need great people to do this. If that's their profession, nonprofit doesn't mean poor. Like, you can hire good people, for crying out loud. Let good people help work on these problems. Think about this, like a problem like this. If you had the best possible marketer in the world, that's like, just go out and get a shot. Like the Checkham Boys campaign they did in the UK in terms of testicular cancer, it cratered like testicular cancer. That campaign worked. They did a great job, but by just getting musicians to make it hooky, and then just said Checkham Boys, and they did. Like, we're dumb, but we're teachable, us men. We'll
right.
do stuff like this. And so don't have bad thoughts about that. And the other thing is don't just start a new charity, for Christ's sakes. There's a lot of charities out there. There's probably one that's already on the money for what you want to do. Find out how you can help them. Put your energy into something that exists. And then if that isn't valuable, then start your own charity. But this stuff is too hard to just go reinvent 1,000 of the same charity. So find the one that leads the way. See if they're doing it in a way that makes sense for you, and either invest your time and money into that, or then go start your own. But don't just start a new charity because you've got a vision. Someone already probably had that vision, and they're probably 5,000 steps ahead of you. So look where you can jump on, because they'll take that kind of help. They'll take your passion and they'll put you to work, and you can continue to make a difference in that way. That's my soapbox speech about charities, and not just starting it. The default cannot be, let's start a nonprofit. The default is go research, find out the best one, see if it works for you, and then make a decision. Sorry, I had to say that.
No. I was going to support exactly what you're saying. So I don't have my own charity. I have the way I communicate, share information regarding HPV, the vaccine, just awareness, and any funding that I have raised. Even when I've spoken places and people have, provided an honorarium, everything gets pointed towards the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance, because they have the structure. That's what I'm passionate about. I wasn't about to start my own one-man show, and I already have a busy life. And so it was easy to be able to provide passion to something that fully supports what I'm passionate about. And so I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Yeah. And you do have a charity. I like to take ownership of it. Save the Brave is my charity. The media arm of it. I create things all the time for them, because it's just by saying the word Save the Brave, it goes into the SEO machine. So you do have, I'm going to force you to take some ownership of what you guys are doing.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. You're doing it. Like, it is your charity. It's your, chosen one. And thank you for doing that, for lifting that weight. I mean, I'm definitely going to have a conversation about my daughter. You've made a difference today. I now know about this. I now can direct people to you or to the website. I mean, that is already a difference. And again, talking to the audience a little bit, but this is how you do it right here. Like, you create that awareness and let people, know that they're are people already working on this problem, and they know a lot and they have a lot of help lined up. What can people do in terms of giving directly? Like if they're inspired right now, do they go to headandneck.org, or what's the path?
Yes, that's what they do. Headandneck.org. There's a donate now or donate here. I could actually look it up, but it's on there on the website, and they could give just generally to the gas card program. And obviously, you never know who it's going to impact. I mean, that's again at the end of the day, this could be helping a family member or a friend. There are people out there, and honestly, I speak to them every month that can't afford to get to treatment. It honestly blew my mind. Because I was raised with family and friend close by, when I started actually hearing stories of people, it broke my heart when I heard people that were diagnosed with cancer, and they literally said to me on the phone, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to have treatment. And I said, what do you mean? They go, well, I just don't know how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you need to contact the head and neck cancer lines. But with that is we need to have gas cards to be able to give to the people, right? So at the end of the day, it's really an important program. And again, we can provide, really all services and support or direction to people who get diagnosed, unfortunately, with this cancer. But I'm sure we're winding up soon. So I would say that this is a preventable cancer. Unlike most of the ones, if not all the other ones that people have been diagnosed with, this is HPV preventable cancer, and Gardasil 9 is the vaccine. Doesn't matter, but Merck's happens to be this pharmaceutical company. But Gardasil 9 is the one that your doctors will speak to you about. And as far as I'm concerned, as a guy who made videos to his kids saying goodbye, it is worthy of you speaking to your kid's doctor about this. I guess that's all from me. I could say more but out of respect of time, it's honestly, no parent should have to make videos to their kids saying goodbye. And it's heart-wrenching when I did that. And so this can protect you or your kids from ever having to do that.
I've been shutting up because you've been saying exactly what needs to be said. I will try to say one more thing. This is seatbelt grade preventative care. It's a shot. Your kid's going to get shots. Get the shot. Be done with it. And then worry about things that you actually don't have the ability to prevent. This is straightforward. Buckle your kid up. Get them that inoculation, and know that you've protected them from good/bad decisions when they get a little bit older. Let's not stigmatize a preventable cancer into the point where people get stage 4 cancer. That's pretty straightforward, right?
And go to the doctor. Guys, if you're guys, women as well, go to the doctor, because without ending on a negative note, I've spoken to people that have waited, and it spread not only to their tonsil, to their neck, it spread to their back. It spread to other parts of their body. And had they gotten to the doctor sooner, and the right doctor, they most likely would have never had the outcome that they're ending up with.
Everybody go to headandneck.org to check out everything about HPV, or you can go to supermanhpv.com to check out Jason's site. Either way, they're both chock full of things. And just by watching the videos, you hear a lot of the same stories and everything, but there's real data there. There's knowledge that you can get your hands wrapped in around pretty quickly. And just, you're right. Get checked out. And ask the question like, hey, I heard about HPV. Do I need to get checked? And the doctor can literally probably check you right there on the spot. So, and if not, it's another appointment. Big deal. Go get checked out so you don't have this problem be something bigger later on. Anything in closing at all, Jason?
Just go to the doctor, get information. I've been doing research for years, and I am always learning something, but speak to your kid's doctor about this. Even if you have a preconceived idea as to what it means, get more education, and you truly can prevent your kids from getting this type of cancer. And there's no better feeling to know, it's a parent's job to protect their kids, in my opinion, right? You protect them from everything you possibly can. Well, this is a way to prevent them and protect them from cancer.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a parent's obligation as far as I'm concerned.
I've been all over the world. One of the universal values is that cancer sucks. Any person you talk to in the world is going to agree with you on that. No one's for cancer.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching the Break It Down Show.